Hello and welcome to Business Daily. I'm Pyeongchang in Seoul. Let's get started with a glimpse of today's highlights. Korea's sports industry is booming ahead of next year's Pyeongchang Winter Olympics. However, some of the less popular non-mainstream sports are struggling to hop on the bandwagon. Trade friction between the US and China are looming, with President Donald Trump expected to lash out at Beijing over issues on trade and intellectual properties. We'll be taking a closer look at this as well as other global business stories that made headlines this week. Don't go away and stay tuned for more stories. First, moving on to markets. To give us a brief picture of today's stock market action, we have our Business Daily Markets contributor, Jamie Kim, joining us on the phone today. Hello, Jamie.
Hello.
So, how did local equities perform today?
Well, Korean shares opened higher today, but there was a bit of mixed action. Foreigners initially snapped up stocks, but reverted to net sellers towards mid-morning, causing the benchmark Kospi to lose ground. But the index soon recovered, ending 0.36% higher at 2395.45 points. The tech-heavy Kosdaq fell 0.23% to 641.58 points. Transportation and chemicals were among the winners today, along with retail, steel, and construction. POSCO closed 1.21% higher, while LG Chem was up 4.1%. Meanwhile, tech heavyweights were down, with number one market cap Samsung Electronics falling 0.17%, while SK Hynix lost 2.29%. Precision medicine, communication, and services were also among industries that ended in negative ground today.
Now, the government announced tighter real estate regulations this week, and experts say this is also affecting local equities. Can you tell us more on that?
Sure. On Wednesday, the government announced its second set of measures to curb speculation in the overheating real estate market here. Now, experts say that funds may flow into stocks as real estate assets may have lost some of their appeal due to the tighter lending rules. Interest rates are also at record lows, prompting more investors to move to equities in search of higher margins. However, skeptics do say that traditionally, Korean stock markets have not benefited from real estate policies, so it does remain to be seen just how big an impact the latest measures would have.
Now, given these factors, can you give us a picture of how the markets will look like in the coming week?
Sure. Well, just to recap just a little bit, this week the market had undergone some adjustment, causing the Kospi to dip below 2,400 points. Analysts say the index is likely to recover next week since it wasn't actually a matter of fundamentals. Rather, they say global IT stocks were suffering from valuation fatigue and that this has affected Korean stocks as well. Experts say market sentiment is likely to pick up next week as investors regain their confidence. Meanwhile, overseas, the U.S. will announce its non-farm sector payrolls later today, and the results will impact the dollar and, of course, global equities, including those in Korea. So that's another factor we'll be looking to engaging market action next week. This has been Jamie Kim for Business Daily.
The Moon administration's latest measures to cool Korea's overheating housing market are not sitting well with the opposition parties. So much so that it prompted a top official from the presidential office to come out on Thursday to clarify the government's plans. Our Hwang Ho-jun has the details.
During a meeting with the press Thursday morning, Kim Soo-hyun, the senior presidential secretary for social affairs, clarified the government's position on the new measures to stabilize the nation's housing market. He addressed some of the criticisms from the opposition parties, who say the measures introduced on Wednesday are practically identical to those that, quote, failed during the former Roh Moo-hyun administration. Kim said he takes responsibility as the then presidential secretary for social affairs under the late President Roh, acknowledging that the measures in the past did indeed fail. He said the reason for that was because they focused only on the supply and demand side of the housing market and lacked a solution to excess liquidity, which eventually triggered the 2008 global financial crisis. Kim said it's a complicated issue, noting that the former Park Geun-hye administration supplied a whopping 700,000 plus new homes in a single year, but still failed to lower housing prices. Which is why he said the government will only increase the supply of homes for the right people once the fire is out. Kim also took a jab at the two former conservative administrations, arguing they are also liable for the recent spike in home prices in Korea. He stressed their policies were focused on cutting regulations in the housing market, which sent the wrong message to the public, urging them to buy a house one way or another, even if it means taking on debt. Kim stressed that it's only been 3 months since the launch of the new government, reiterating that it will not back down under any circumstances in its efforts to stabilize and transform the nation's overheated housing market over the next 5 years. Hwang Ho-jun, Business Daily.
China's economic retaliation over the deployment of a THAAD missile defense battery is battering the exports of Korea's agricultural and fisheries products. According to the Korea Agro-Fisheries and Food Trade Corporation on Friday, the country's agricultural and fisheries exports to China last month were seen at roughly $110 million. That is an 11.2% decrease from the same month last year. Korea's agricultural exports to China had been seeing monthly increases up until this March. However, they started to drop from April just after China launched its economic retaliatory measures in mid-March. China's Xiaomi has taken the lead in the global sales of wearable devices for the first time, fending off competition from Fitbit and Apple. Research from Strategy Analytics says the Chinese tech giant shipped 3.7 million devices during the April to June period, up 23% from the same time last year. Xiaomi now accounts for over 17% of the global market for wearable devices, thanks to strong sales of its low-end Mi-band fitness trackers. Fitbit, whose market share plunged by over 28% on year to 15.7%, ranked second, followed by Apple in third. The overall shipment of wearable devices increased by 8% in the second quarter. Korea is seeing an increasing number of product recalls, and the government is trying to make the process easier for people to register their products in case they need to be returned for either repairs or a refund. Our Lee Ji-young has more.
The number of defective products being recalled is continuing to rise in the country, prompting the government to implement a more consumer-friendly recall system by next year. According to the Fair Trade Commission, there were over 1,600 product recalls last year, up about 1% from the previous year. The figure has continued to rise over the years. From what was only 143 cases in 2006, it jumped to a record 1,752 in 2014. The FTC added that it's mostly private enterprises that are leading this growth instead of public firms, as they sought to build a more positive corporate image through voluntary recalls amid heightened concerns over consumer safety. By item, recalls of industrial products were the highest at 622 last year, followed by goods in the food, automobile, and pharmaceutical sector. In terms of percentage rise, cosmetic products saw the most significant increase, surging by 371.4% last year as a result of aggressive recall measures from the country's public health and consumer agencies. The government is looking to strengthen the recall system by more effectively cutting off the distribution of recalled items, enhancing consumer accessibility, and introducing a rating system for potentially harmful products. Lee Ji-young, Business Daily.
Extra holidays and hot weather have propelled second quarter credit card sales. According to data from Credit Finance Association, credit card spending rose 11% on year in the April to June period, setting a quarterly record in the process. Travel expenses in May and June and sales of air conditioners and air purifiers due to the hot weather are being seen as the main drives of growth. Corporate spending, however, saw a steep 18% fall to just $31.6 billion. This as the government clamped on corporate user benefits offered by credit card companies, including tax exemptions, no interest on monthly installments, and cashback benefits. The head of the Credit Finance Association noted when excluding non-economic factors, domestic consumption flow was healthy in the second quarter. As the summer heat continues, sales of more advanced air conditioners are rapidly growing, with popular features including human detection sensors and fanless units. Our Elliot Kim reports.
Nowadays, customers shopping for an air conditioner aren't satisfied with simply having a cool breeze blow at them. Many of them actually want to cool their spaces without any breeze at all. That wish came to fruition last year when Samsung launched its windfree air conditioner. 5 years of R&D culminated in a design that, after quickly cooling down the room using a fan, maintains the temperature by sending air through 135,000 tiny holes. Samsung has seen strong sales of these units. When announcing the 2017 unveiling of the units, Seo Byung-sam, the president of Samsung's home appliances division, said that consumers will enjoy the cool, efficient air conditioning capabilities, while also noting they will really love that they no longer have to deal with uncomfortable, cold air. The units are equipped with human detection sensors that recognize movement and automatically turn the air vents in the customer's direction. They can also recognize when the room is empty and switch to a power-saving mode that uses 35% less energy.
The sensors analyze the space and intelligently direct cool air towards where people are working, a method that is more pleasant, quicker, and saves energy.
With heat waves in full force, air conditioners are in especially high demand, with wait times approaching 1 month from purchase until installation. Despite this, consumers are continuing to flock to the newer, more advanced air conditioners, drawn to their appealing features. Elliot Kim, Business Daily.
Ahead of next year's Pyeongchang Olympic Games, winter sports activities have been drawing a lot of attention. Growth in the sports industry not only elevates Korea's national image, but also comes with economic benefits as well. With Korea's sports industry already worth nearly $40 billion, here's how the country is looking to take another step forward.
Korea is becoming an international sports powerhouse. Large number of spectators flocking to watch popular games boost ticket sales, along with income earned from the sale of broadcasting rights. Merchandising revenue from team promotions is also rising continuously. Now, large Korean companies are scrambling to invest and sponsor various sports teams. The Korean sports industry is now worth roughly $40 billion. The industry is growing 5% every year, with the number of workers and businesses in the sector also on the rise. Korean sports has reinvented itself, going from a leisure sector to a full-fledged profit-generating industry. Despite steady overall growth, the less popular sports categories haven't caught onto the wave. They are barely scraping by with a shoestring budget. Compared to the roughly $90 million earmarked every year for the country's football association, governing bodies for less popular sports run on a budget that is less than 5% of that figure. Despite the lack of financial backing and policy support from the government, athletes in these sports are bringing home great results, winning medals at international tournaments.
Sports stars can be a role model to motivate young athletes. When a particular sport draws a sufficient number of athletes to form a strong base, public interest will follow naturally.
One sport in its early development stage has received notable attention for its massive growth potential. It is none other than cricket, which was first introduced to Korea via the 2014 Incheon Asian Games. Cricket might be lesser known in Korea, but it is one of the 3 major sports in terms of global popularity, with nearly 2 billion fans worldwide. Cricket players in England, Australia and India earn salaries exceeding those of Major League Baseball players in the US. Here at a cricket ground in Incheon, the national team is in the middle of their practice session. Currently, the Korean cricket team is comprised of 14 male and 15 female athletes. Training is conducted with what little funds are provided by the government. But the national team certainly proved their worth by making it into the quarterfinals at the Incheon Asian Games and winning last year's East Asia Cup.
I know cricket isn't a popular sport, but I feel very rewarded by our results, especially after putting in so much hard work.
Compared to 4 years ago when the team was first launched, the number of athletes applying for tryouts jumped threefold this year. I think cricket is now becoming popular and we're expecting it become even more so in the future.
The national team joined hands with the city of Incheon with the goal of winning more medals at international competitions. The cricket ground in Incheon serves as the team's main training facility. Thanks to government funding, qualified foreign coaches have been hired to take part in overseas training and competitions. While the players are hard at work to improve their skills, the Cricket Association is trying to promote and raise awareness of the sport to the general public. The National Cricket Association is running an amateur cricket league made up of 17 teams across the country. Also, cricket classes are being held once a month in nearby local elementary schools.
자, 오늘 알지? 우리 뭐 하러 왔지 여기? 크리켓! 공격할 때는 몇 명 들어가요? 11명. 다자 2명.
Cricket is a very unfamiliar sport in Korea. So in this year we have around 20 to 30 schools. So we teach mostly every day we goes and we run different cricket sessions. And our plan to spread it all over Korea.
Despite all these efforts and investment, cricket is at risk of being excluded from the 2018 Jakarta Asian Games. For less popular sports such as cricket, survival is difficult without adequate policy measures and financial support.
If cricket is excluded from the Asian Games, we could face a situation where we no longer receive funding for our training. All of our efforts would be in vain if financial support is cut off.
지금 대한민국의 스포츠는 한마디로 얘기하면 정원이에요.
You can think of the Korean sporting landscape as a garden of sorts. A beautiful garden can only be created when there's a large variety of different plants. We must cultivate all types of different sports, no matter how big or small. Only when we create such diversity will the sporting industry at large have further room to grow.
By attracting more public interest and investments from both the government and corporations, it is hoped that Korea will emerge to become a global sporting powerhouse through the balanced development of all sports, even the less popular ones.
Time now for a look through some important global business stories from the week with Eunice Kim, who joins us in the studio. Hello, Eunice.
Happy Friday, Myung-gil.
So there are re-emerging concerns of a potential trade war between the world's two biggest economies, the US and China. Tell us what's behind this.
Yeah, that's right, Myung-gil. We are seeing reports this week that the Trump administration could soon be signaling an investigation into Chinese trade practices. This as soon as later on this Friday, Washington time. So when it does happen, many will be watching whether the already souring relations between the two countries could turn into a destabilizing trade war. Take a look.
Talk of a potential trade war is back on the street, unnerving investors in Korea's financial markets at one point this week. This on the heels of reports that U.S. President Donald Trump was soon to make a statement that criticizes China's trade practices and sign a memo that officially launches a probe into alleged violations. At the heart of the matter is intellectual property protection, especially as it's tied to future technology. China has made no secret of its ambition to become the leader in tech by 2025, be it in semiconductors, driverless cars, artificial intelligence, or medical devices, under its Made in China 2025 policy. U.S. lawmakers see Beijing's requirements for American firms to work with local partners, or for global tech giants such as Amazon, Apple, and Microsoft to build data centers in China before tapping into its massive consumer market as ways for the developing state to grow on the back of U.S. innovation. It's a concern that's gaining traction in Washington. Republican and Democratic lawmakers have been united for months in expressing their unease over China's, quote, forced transfer of intellectual property. The Wall Street Journal reports this week Robert Lighthizer, the U.S. trade representative and longtime China critic, met with a member of the Senate Finance Committee to discuss how to move forward. Beijing has been projecting a wait-and-see posture as it denied charges it was breaking any rules.
I want to emphasize the Chinese government attaches great importance to the protection of international property rights, and our success is there for all to see. Any trade measures taken by a member of the World Trade Organization should all respect the World Trade Organization's rules.
This confidence comes on the back of those rules. At the turn of the millennium, Washington had approved leeway for China, then in the process of joining the World Trade Organization. It was allowed special protections, including provisions that requires domestic partners in critical industries, with the understanding Beijing would voluntarily take off its training wheels in due time.
But of course, China has not taken off those training wheels and is not likely to do so anytime soon, right, Eunice?
Right, exactly. And that is why Robert Lighthizer, America's top trade diplomat, has already dismissed the WTO as ill-fitted to address this issue. And some speculate the U.S. could instead activate a rarely used provision called Section 301. That's of the 1974 Trade Act to trigger an investigation and would allow the president to impose more tariffs, perhaps even sanctions, to protect American industries from unfair practices of its foreign competitors. Now, among the challenges would still be proving coercion, since much of that pressure from Beijing, as we know well here in Korea, comes informally, not in documented form. It's also important to note China is in the midst of a very important leadership transition year. 5 of 7 members in the powerful Politburo Standing Committee are due to retire. So ahead of the 19th Party Congress in the fall, President Xi Jinping will want to project calm and consistency while showing no signs of weakness.
Now, going back to Washington, the Trump administration has also pitched a new immigration program policy that's already run into a lot of resistance, right?
Yeah, a lot of eyes on this new proposal. It is a points-based immigration program that would cut legal immigration by half over 10 years. At least that's the aim. Take a listen.
This competitive application process will favor applicants who can speak English, financially support themselves and their families, and demonstrate skills that will contribute to our economy.
This is called the RAISE Act, and the points would be added up to determine one's eligibility for a green card, which is, of course, the residency card in the U.S. And the overarching idea, according to Trump and administration officials, is to protect U.S. workers from being displaced, as it would prevent new migrants from collecting welfare immediately. And it will also bring in skilled individuals, as they say, thereby raising wages and creating jobs. But already the proposal is being questioned, in essence, on whether it is true to the American spirit. And finally, China has started construction on what's set to become the world's second largest hydroelectric Dam. Now, the Baihetan project was launched on Thursday on the Jinsha River, an upstream branch of the Yangtze River. The dam will assist in flood protection and address water shortages in the surrounding areas. With a 16,000 megawatt capacity, the dam is expected to power not only the immediate regions, but those across central China as well. Around 100,000 residents are being relocated to build this dam as Beijing tries to tap into its abundant hydropower resources to further diversify its power supply and move away from fossil fuels. The first batch of generators are set to come online in 2021, with full operations slated to begin in 2022.
Well, we'll certainly look forward to that second largest dam that China will be building. Thank you for that report, Eunice.
Sure thing.
And that wraps it up for today and this week. Thank you for watching, and we'll be back next week with more at the same time, same place for your Business Daily. Have a great start to your weekend. Goodbye.